If I had $1 for every hunch that paid off, I'd be as rich as Bruce Wayne. But I'm Anthony.
I'm Damon.
I'm David.
I'm Kirby.
I'm Dr. Kurtstad.
I'm Kate.
And I'm Jim.
Welcome to issue number 133 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. Each and every week, we meet here on the internet to talk about comics. We have a couple segments for you today. The first one, we're going to go around the internet a couple times, our virtual table, if you will, as we talk about the weekly reviews of the comics that we've been reading, both of new and old. And then we're going to have a letters page in which we're going to discuss the following question, which will be, which comic book city do you want to live in? So that'll be later in the show. Start thinking of your answers now, both everybody here and those listening and watching at home. So we will kick it off here with our weekly reviews, something that has been on my list since the writer-artist walked into Crimson Cowl. This is Extremity, volume number 1. Thea was an artist with a family that loved her and a life without worry. But that was all taken away when the Paznina attacked the Roto. Now Thea dreams, not of a better life, but of revenge on the clan that ruined her family. Consumed by vengeance and longing to regain what she's lost, Thea follows her father down a dark path that can only end in blood. But how far is she willing to go? So this is written and drawn by Daniel Warren Johnson with colors by Mike Spicer and letters by Russ Wooten. This here is one of the titles that Daniel Warren Johnson has really kind of broke out in fame for and what he's really known for. I think it's a 12-issue run. This is the first volume that collects the first 6 issues of the story. And it has a sort of a has a fantasy space type element. I get a lot of vibes of Firefly, but just more violent. You know, the Firefly met, you know, like a Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones type of fantasy. This story does not waste any time to just kick in right into the action, seeing Thea and her family being attacked by this force. And you have some loss that is happening within her family, and then immediately you cut later in the future. I'm not sure if they just say present day or however many years later, but I think she was just a young girl, and now she's maybe a teenager, early 20s or something. And it is following them wanting to get revenge on the people that had attacked them, causing the death in their family. You have Thea, her dad, and her brother. All 3 of them kind of have different outlooks on how they want to get revenge on these people, and they kind of approach that in different ways. And basically, what they've taken from their loss, and what inspires them to kind of keep living, and how they find peace with that. Thea is an artist as a young girl, and it's always kind of cool seeing characters within a book of artists drawing characters who are artists, and you just see like an extra level of artwork in there. And there's something that happened very significantly to Thea that kind of changes her passion for art and the ability to kind of muster up the enthusiasm to draw again. And that's a pretty emotional beat throughout this entire story. You do see an attack by that force once again, and now they've been kind of prepping for it. They've prepping for this eventual battle to gain a little semblance of life again. Daniel Warren Johnson is great at just drawing big action scenes, and he's got a lot of like giant, made up creatures like this kind of rhinoceros space thing here with some bunch of like eyeballs by like the corner of the mouth there. So he's really awesome at just drawing all of these crazy type creatures. So yeah, very action packed, very emotionally driven. It was a really fast read. I think the pacing of it I was so into the high octane of Extremity. I cannot wait to pick up volume number 2. So yeah, once again, if you like a Firefly, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings mashup, that's kind of what I'm getting with the vibe here. So that is Extremity, volume 1, titled Artist. All right, we'll move over to Damon for the next book.
Alrighty. I picked up, it's a title that's been out for a while. I'm sure many of you have probably read them. But I got Nailbiter. The whole series is put into 3 hardcovers. This is the first hardcover collecting the first 10 issues. Nailbiter is kind of like a horror mystery, kind of like a Twin Peaks meets Seven type of book. The story takes place in Buckaroo, Oregon, where 16 of America's worst serial killers were born. So something about this town gives birth to serial killers. And the latest one is called Edward Charles Warren. He's the Nailbiter. His little claim to fame is he'll pick out his victims, men or women, that bite their fingernails, which unfortunately would be me. And then he keeps them captive until the fingernails grow back. And then he chews their fingernails and their fingers down to the bone before he finally kills them. He is released on a technicality, so he doesn't go to prison after he's murdered several people. And an FBI agent goes into Buckaroo to investigate why that town has spawned so many serial killers, and that FBI agent disappears. So his friend comes into town to try and find him and put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and through a twist of fate, he has to team up with the Nailbiter to try and solve the riddle. It's a great story. Not a lot of action. There is action, but there's a lot of how would you say attention. It builds and it builds, and there's always something going on, and then they give you a little an image or a piece, and it's good. It keeps you interested. I breezed through this book in no time, and there is a new killer. This is what he looks like. That is all we have seen so far in the first 10 issues. That one glimpse. So
Toenail biter.
He's the big baddie. Don't know, but it was a fun read. This being the hardcover, there's like images and a script and stuff in the back, but it was a lot of fun. It's a nice horror story. I'm looking forward to finishing the run. Did any of you ever read any of the Nailbiter issues?
Nope.
No.
It's been on my long list. I know co-creator Joshua Williamson, who is currently writing The Flash. He was recently on Comic Book Club, the podcast, not Crimson Cowl Comic Book Club, but he did a big interview on there because there is a new volume that is starting that is acting as a jumping on point as well, but that's coming out either this coming week or this past week or something.
Yeah, it's supposed to. It was gotten delayed, so sometime within the next month or two will be the new Nailbiter series. But yeah, this is written by Joshua Williamson, and the artist is Mike Henderson.
And the one thing I noticed as you were talking about this, just to connect Anthony's thing and Damon's thing, Daniel Warren Johnson is kind of a serial killer name, isn't it?
Yeah.
They like to give them those three. It's like people who assassinate presidents. They got to use the 3 names. As soon as you said the guy's name, like Daniel.
And I know DWJ has a big wrestling obsession, so I'm sure if he needs to get any barbed wire, chair attacks, ladders, whatever, I'm sure he would use that.
Well, Murder Falcon itself is kind of like a serial killer nickname.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Go ahead.
No, that would be the serial killer name right there. And for years people are trying to figure out who is the Murder Falcon. It turns out to be this guy, Daniel Warren Johnson.
There was also
Let's not start any rumors.
there was also a fun
Wait.
little issue that had like a comic within the comic. It had Brian Michael Bendis, comic book writer.
Another
He-
serial killer.
He comes, what's that?
Another serial killer.
Yeah.
Brian Michael Bendis.
He comes to town trying to get some material because he's thinking of doing a serial killer comic. So he ends up talking to the Nailbiter, finds himself in a place he should not be. He hears a voice behind him, realizes no comic is worth this, runs out. And then it's cool. At a convention, someone gives him a note, and he doesn't see it. But there in the middle is the shocked look on Brian Michael Bendis' face.
That's a good Bendis drawing.
Note above it, so if you can't read it, says, "I let you live in the caves, but I'll be watching you."
So actually, he's not the serial killer. He's a victim. Being hunted down by the BMB killer.
And with Brian's appearance in there, it's actually kind of funny because Joshua is a student of Brian. Brian does teach a class about making comics and everything, and Joshua was one of his students who has now just become big name for DC. There's instant legendary Flash run that has spawned into the television show like almost at the same time, where they're just taking all these new storylines he's doing, and then he's got several independent creations like Nailbiter and things like that. But yeah, it's definitely the size of a property that I could see being picked up as an adaptation down the road. It just I think it has a lot there. So
Yeah, it was fun. I'd love to see this as like a Netflix series or something like that. And
all right, well, I'm gonna green light it with my button right here.
Yep.
Okay, done. All right, let's jump over to David for the next one.
All right, so not actually a new comic, but a new to me comic because it was one that we didn't get. I put on the reorders and finally got it this week. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, number 104. Because of how things are working out, this will probably be the last issue that I'm getting, which it actually ends up being a good ending, if you're jumping off. It's also it seems to be kind of a good starting point because they're kind of wrapping up the aftermath of the 100th issue. They've been kind of reeling from that and everything else. The Turtles months afterwards are not really speaking to each other. Of course, Splinter had died in that one. They were all mourning him. None of them felt like doing anything. Raph goes out and does the vigilante thing. In the meantime, there's this new Mutant Town, I think, or whatever they're calling it. They set off this mutagen bomb thing, and everyone within this certain radius got mutated. And then they built this big wall surrounding it, which you can't get in or out of, except that a lot of these guys seem to be able to get in and out of it. So it's not all that foolproof. But this issue, it kind of gets the Turtles all back together, all 5 of them. And kind of with some newer characters that were introduced in this story. They're getting together, bringing back the family, and they decided to honor Splinter by starting a dojo and teaching the people in this mutant town where they can now live and do regular people things for the first time in their lives. They're going to start this dojo. They're going to teach anybody. Anybody can now come in and learn to be a ninja and join the Splinter Clan, as they're calling their new clan. So it was really a good wrap up for the all the aftermath stuff, and leading into new stories for the Turtles. So this is a really good, issue if you're wanting to step off of it, but it also is going to be a good place to kind of jump on if you didn't pick up the 100th and continue on there. This, you're starting to see where the turtles are going to go. So in that way, it would be a good jump on point for anybody who's interested but was hesitant, and now they're thinking about jumping into it. I'm trying to remember what issue they're actually up to now with all the delays and everything, because this came out. Anthony, you're getting this too. What was the newest?
Yeah, it's not too much later. Like, it's either 105. It might be 105.
Yeah, I don't remember if 105 came out. I ended up not getting that one, unless I end up getting that one on some reorder too, because we don't know what's going on with all that stuff. But yeah, they're not very far ahead at this point. I think they were supposed to be up quite a bit further. I think the most recent solicited one is like 108. So, but again, we don't know what that means just because it's solicited. So, yeah, it's good. I've been really enjoying it, but as I'm stepping off of reading new comics for a while, I got to say, this is one that I would recommend anybody who has an interest in the Turtles. I've really been enjoying reading what they're doing with this.
And that's actually the latest issue that you have right there. So.
Oh, it is? Okay.
All right. We will jump over to Kirby for the next title.
From DC and the Hanna-Barbera universe, we have Dastardly and Muttley. Writer Garth Ennis from Preacher and the Punisher teams with acclaimed artist Morissette from Harley Quinn for an all-new adventure showcasing the classic Hanna-Barbera heavies as you've never seen them before. In the faraway land of Unlicklistan, the nation's first nuclear power plant is about to go online, but the ultra-rare element unstabilium proves to be a bad choice for reactor fuel. Very soon, exotic and unheard of isotopes are loosed upon an unsuspecting world, and results are cartoonishly catastrophic. Spread by a mysteriously unstoppable predator drone, the farcical fallout is turning men into beasts, beasts into men, and the President of the United States into a raving lunatic. Or that might be something else. Only two men, persons, whatevers, stands in the way of total global meltdown. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Dick Atcherley and Captain Dudley Muller, these fearless, feckless, 50% furry fighter pilots must take to the skies in their flying machines to stop the rogue UAVs, radioactive cargo, from destroying civilization as we collectively pretend to know it. Collectively, the entire 6-issue miniseries, Dastardly and Muttley, is a zany military satire like no other, mashing up Animal Farm, Dr. Strangelove, and wacky races in the same anything goes spirit as the smash hit Flintstone series. This was a very strange, fun story, but it's something you might have to read a couple times to catch on to. I was a little bit confused because they do throw some. I understand with Disney buying everything out, I'm assuming they own Hanna-Barbera too and all that stuff. But you'll have the little cartoonish toys pop in and he like blows a hole in a guy's stomach, but the guy's still alive walking around. He's wondering what's going on. Everybody starts turning into different comic book characters, and for some reason you have Warner Brothers, Disney, I mean, yeah, Little Mermaid being foxed out of a river. And it's like, I just didn't really understand why they crossed over to all they had Scooby and them in here, which, yeah, you do have some of them with the Laugh Olympics and stuff like that, but that was a little bit confusing to me, but it's got good artwork, and stuff. It's Muttley I would have liked to have seen done more like the Laugh Olympics version. They do have some different cover arts and stuff in the back with different styles that they did with Muttley. But they never went back to the original look. But yeah, if you like any of the characters, it might be fun to check out for you. I wouldn't really say relatable to the Laugh Olympics and Dastardly and Muttley. It's more of just a military type story to follow through with. But yeah, it's fun.
Muttley's main line still.
Yeah, the way they do it, it doesn't really give you that effect of the. Yeah, he does do that line over and over a few times.
No, unfortunately, I don't have some way like just pulling up a smartphone and checking. But I think Warner Brothers might actually have the Hanna-Barbera stuff.
I think so. I think you're right.
Is doing all of the Hanna-Barbera stuff now.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, they had Disney characters in there, so I can't see how Disney wouldn't have a pinch of the penny if there's anything Disney related in there. So
maybe it's one of those secret Marvel Disney or Marvel DC crossovers.
Yeah.
Well, the Little Mermaid is actually Disney does not own the Little Mermaid because that's public domain. But when you make her Ariel and put her in that costume and everything, then it becomes Disney.
Well, that kind of goes for a lot of the DC princesses and stuff like that. Is
the Marvel princesses? Yeah.
He just made them the most money.
Exactly. All of them. Yeah, they're all in public domain, so anybody can write a Snow White story. You just can't use her costume and her lyrics and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because I can't find the damn page now, of course, but they do go into a thing where they find all these characters with Cthulhu bottoms. They're all these giant statues and stuff. And like the earth is turning into a certain mouse. Stuff like that. But yeah, and you do have Jabberjaw and stuff, but one of the biggest creatures of the Cthulhu creatures, the giant Pluto, which he must be like the head god or whatever. But Pluto is Disney, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, he used to be a planet, but then Disney bought him, and now he's not planet anymore.
Now he's a dog.
Pluto Nash. Pluto Nash. That's something else, right?
Ah, that's right. It is.
All right, let's jump over to Dr. Kurtzstad for our next title.
All right, I feel a little bit like Wayne and Garth. We're going back in time. Mr. Miracle, Jack Kirby's Mr. Miracle collects all of the 18 issues of Mr. Miracle that Jack Kirby did between 1972 and 1974. The trade paperback is done in the beautiful 4-color graphics that were popular back in 72 and 74. I have always loved Mr. Miracle as a character. Jack Kirby developed the whole, I guess, universe of New Genesis versus Apocalypse and Darkseid as part of his whole kind of mythology that he built up. And one of the main characters in that is Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle starts out as a child born of the leader of New Genesis, but is sent to Apocalypse as part of a peace treaty to prevent a war between New Genesis and Apocalypse. While there, he's pretty brutally treated in Granny Goodness's orphanage, but he earns the name scot-free because he's always escaping from Granny Goodness off to some other places. In the beginning, the Mr. Miracle series, he's escaped from Apocalypse, goes to Earth, and runs into Thaddeus Brown, who is an escape artist, who in the first couple issues, Mr. Miracle helps him with gangsters who are trying to to kill him, but in the end, Thaddeus Brown is killed, and Scott Free takes over as Mr. Miracle, the amazing escape artist who can escape from anything. And throughout the series, then what we have is Darkseid and his evil cohort from Apocalypse are constantly trying to bring Scott back to Apocalypse, but their way of fighting is always to present Scott with an inescapable trap, because there are kind of rules of engagement that have to go on to bring Scott back, and he always finds a way out each and every time. And for me, what is most appealing about this whole idea of Mr. Miracle is first to have a person whose superpower is to escape, not to break down walls or beat people up or any of those things. The superpower is to escape from anything. And it's just fun to watch the escapes that go on. But at a deeper level, I think Mr. Miracle has also always been a story about a person who refuses to have their freedom suppressed by anything. In the end, this person will always be free. That's why he takes the name Scott Free as his main name. And his powers are really his genius, his athletic abilities, and a few gimmicks that he hides in his costume. And a mother box, which he stole from Apocalypse. But I just love that kind of character. And there's even it's interesting to follow Mr. Miracle in these early stories, because even in times when there's heavy confrontation, his first sort of response is not to fight, but somehow de-escalate the situation by either escaping or accepting a challenge, but not necessarily immediately to go into combat with someone. And that becomes kind of the earmark of who Mr. Miracle is as a character, much more of a gentle character who's continually thrust into places where there's conflict. Eventually, in later years, he'll become a member of the JLA and the Just and all kinds of other organizations fighting crime. But even then, his place always seems to be to think things out rather than to punch things out. And as a character, I really appreciate that in Mr. Miracle. So Mr. Miracle for years has been one of my favorite characters in the DC universe. So anybody who is interested, Jack Kirby's Mr. Miracle. This is the beginning of it all.
Jughead of the JLA.
There was a lot of us here that really liked the recent run and the maxi series of Mr. Miracle. Have you read these original ones before, or is this the first time?
Yeah, I've read them before. This is the first time I've had them all collected in a single issue. Mr. Miracle is kind of interesting in that Mr. Miracle as a character on his own really had 3 repristinations. You had this first one with Jack Kirby creating the character, and then I think it was around the 90s they had a series where he's married to Big Barda at that particular point, and he's trying to build a life in a normal community. He's trying to leave all that kind of crazy escape and superhero stuff behind, but wherever he goes, it still always seems to follow him. And so that particular series is really focused on that attempt by him and Barda to build a normal life, which always seems to elude them. And then in the most recent series, which is a little darker than much of the other pieces of the Mr. Miracle storyline, he comes to a point where the only thing he hasn't really escaped is death. And so now his life is focused on, can he escape from death itself? And also there's a darkness in that the plot lines from Apocalypse become much darker in their approach, trying to drive Scott Free mad rather than just trap him in some trap. And so to me, he's just been fascinating in every sort of regeneration of Mr. Miracle that comes along. So I had fun going back to the beginning.
Excellent. All right, let's jump over to Jim.
I was just want to know if that was a new issue of that book.
Let's see, this one, well, I got it from Crimson Cowl, so it's been released again pretty recently. So, yeah.
Yeah, with the current New Gods movie that's in development, it's in the writing stage right now, and with the success of the last Mr. Miracle run, most likely they're ready to...
2019 this came out.
Yeah, they're ready to unleash all that stuff to kind of
Yep.
have it all accessible for once that movie is available. So,
Yep.
All right, Jim.
All right, you said I was up. All right, I was directed to these last week, and I picked up 4 of these from AWA Studios, their new Upshot line. And this one, I got 4 of them, and they're all number 1s. And this one is The Resistance. And it is written by J. Michael Straczynski, who I know from television writing.
Babylon 5.
A lot of sci-fi on TV. And like I said, there's 4 different books, and I'll talk about each of them in turn. But reading the back material, this is supposed to be a shared universe for between all these books. So that's going to be interesting to see how that comes out. This one is, I think this one is my favorite of the 4 so far. This is a pure sci-fi book. It's an Earth-based instead of a space opera sci-fi, and it is very timely.
Yes.
There is a worldwide epidemic, a pandemic going on, and they have to figure out what's going on. And apparently it's not exactly what's going on in our world, but it just, the way it happened and the way this book starts talking about that is like, oh my God, is he a prophet? Is he a seer? Did he know what was going on? But, and then, it was, like I said, this is my favorite. This is a 6-issue run, and I am definitely going back to pick up the rest. I looked in the new catalog, and number 4 is one being solicited right now. So 2 and 3 are out there someplace that I have to find. So, and then the cover is really cool.
Yeah, it is.
Let's see where we go. There we go. The world turning into a burning skull. And it's a really nice, clean production. The art's pretty good. It's not my favorite, but it's not bad at all. Let's see, who is the artist? Mike Deodato Jr. and colors by Frank Martin. So I do recognize that name. I can't say what he's done before exactly though, but yes. And then here's all 4 of the Upshot.
Cool.
From that line. Okay. And
but it wasn't. I think it was great too. I read it, and
yeah,
I think it's well written. There are some interesting twists in it. I don't want to give any of it away, but certainly. And
this is the one that I want to finish right now.
Yep.
I mean, the other ones I want to see where they're going, but this one I want to keep reading.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to jump over to my title here, which is a number 1 issue. It's actually from 2 years ago from Dynamite Comics. This is called Robots versus Princesses. The comic event of the year has arrived when plucky Princess Zara stumbles upon the Decimator Defector Wheeler. She sets in motion events that will pit the sprightly cleverness of fairy tale princesses against the raw power of giant robots. The dream match you never thought you'd see begins here. Don't miss it. I missed it for 2 years because I just read this now. This is a really fun paced story. Princess Zara, there's a recital that's coming up, and apparently they have to kind of choose an animal. They have a talent. They have to present themselves to the royals, and what's kind of fun, there's a lot of cliches when it comes to like princess stories here. Her sisters are kind of ragging on her the way she's not really showing interest in this recital presentation. But what's cool is that immediately the story cuts over to the robot side, and we almost have a similar thing that's happening, in which this kind of little outcast robot kind of dreams of going outside of their realm, and same thing is happening with the princess too. So at the same time, you're kind of flipping back and forth where these characters are kind of feeling excluded from their families and their lifestyle, and they're dreaming of something bigger and something brighter that's beyond the wall, so to speak. And so it's fun to see how these two very different characters in appearance and lifestyle, the princess and the robot, how they eventually meet up in this first issue, and what that means. The title says robots versus princesses. So I'm very curious to see what will happen. Once again, it was from 2 years ago. I got to look to see how many issues did come out of this, because I definitely want to get more. But with someone who is a fan of both of those kind of stories, mashing them up together was something that I didn't think I needed, and now I want more of it. So yeah, it's definitely a fun idea that is putting a little spin on a classic fairy tale princess type of story. But yeah, artwork is really cute and adorable. Just a real, cartoony type of style that really fits with the princess stuff. The whole robot side doesn't necessarily change dramatically when it comes to the art style. I guess you could kind of see that with some of the storytelling, or if it was done by a different artist in Grimm or something, but it follows the same kind of art style as well, to kind of make robots and princesses combine naturally. So that is from Dynamite Comics. Check it out. Then we will move over to David for the next title.
All right. Okay, so my next one is an older one that I just came across when I was going through some other things, and I give it a reread. That is Superman Speeding Bullets, and this is an Elseworlds title. And for anyone who hasn't read it, what this one is about is, well, it starts with a familiar origin, an exploding green planet, a rocket going to Earth, and a couple of people finding the rocket and finding a baby in the rocket.
There's a pretty cute baby in the picture too.
What's that?
There's a pretty cute little baby they had pictured there too.
So the difference is that the people who find him aren't a couple Kansas farmers. They're Dr. Thomas Wayne and his wife Martha.
Martha? Did you say Martha?
I did say Martha. And so this Kryptonian orphan is rocketed to Earth and raised by the Waynes, who have no children of their own. But familiar to Batman stories, he grows up with the Waynes and their faithful butler Alfred, until one night when they're walking home from a show, and well, most of you know what typically happens in the Batman origin. And again, this happens. Things get a little out of hand. This person who's robbing them ends up killing both of the Waynes, Thomas and Martha. But what happens is their adopted son, Bruce, he becomes infuriated and unleashes heat vision and basically melts off the guy's face. So yeah, that's not something that the Bruce Wayne we all know would have done.
Now, I do have to ask before you move on from that scene, do we see pearls drop in the Elseworld story?
There are not really. You do see he's grabbing at the pearls here.
But there's not at least a 3 splash page scene of the pearls dropping.
The pearls being ripped off here, but
Okay.
yeah,
They're
there's not there's not like pearls laying all over the ground or anything. Although they might be covered with particles of burnt bad guy face. Well, actually, they don't get quite pulled off. Now that you mention it, they weren't quite pulled off because here they're still attached on.
So this could be the only Wayne origin story that had the pearls intact.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Only in Elseworlds.
So this Bruce Wayne, he's raised by Alfred. He doesn't have a lot of purpose in life, you know. He is not very social, and Alfred always tries to get him to go out and be part of the world. To which he shows all the crime and everything in the newspaper, and kind of throws that in Alfred's face, like, this is the world that you want me to be a part of. And then as he's kind of struggling with some memories of his past, and the images of people lying in the street because people had been shot and whatever, and all these images in the newspaper are kind of getting to him. And as he's having this little bit of a breakdown to it, somebody breaks in to Wayne Manor and is holding Alfred at gunpoint, and he's just stirred up this anger. He once again attacks, and as it turns out, he's kind of forgotten what he did as a child. These were repressed memories, and so it all comes back to him, you know, as he, you know, melts another guy. You know, he suddenly remembers as it all comes back to him. And he questions Alfred, "What am I?" Alfred shows him the rocket and explains what he knows about him. And then we have images of Bruce flying with the bats in the Batcave. Meanwhile, we have our villain introduced. But things aren't what they seem, as this is a blend of a Batman and a Superman story. You know, you can take some guesses at how this is going to work out.
A bald Joker?
It might be a bald Joker. Here we see the first glimpse as of this version of Batman as he goes down and attacks these villains. But this Batman, instead of threatening to drop people off of a rooftop, actually flies up in the air well above the rooftops and drops them. So, then we're introduced to what may be another villain, familiar villain, Lex Luthor, who is newly arrived in Gotham City. We got Bruce Wayne, who owns the Gotham Gazette. He wants it to be a respected newspaper, so he hires a couple of people like Lois Lane and Perry White to kind of shape up the Gotham Gazette. There's instantly this connection between him and Lois. Lois gets herself into some trouble and is rescued by Batman. But Batman is very violent. He's threatening to stick his fingers through people's skulls and things like that. And Lois doesn't really like this. She's not a real big fan. She actually, when he tries to assist her, kind of smacks him away. She's just disturbed by his lack of respect for human life and things like that. By contrast, Bruce Wayne is this very caring person. He's trying to do some good in the world and using his wealth for good things and whatever. And Lois is attracted to that. So, so here we have
Attracted to the wealth.
Yeah, attracted to the wealth. Aren't we all? So you have Bruce Wayne and Lois Lane kind of getting together, and then we have Lex Luthor revealing himself as this reality's Joker.
You called it, Anthony.
Yeah. The big, fat, bald, laughing man. So he's, flying off with Lois Lane. And of course, then there's the epic battle between Batman and Joker, which ends in Batman flying way up in the air and throwing Joker down to the ground. The type of thing that Batman would typically do. Yeah.
On a bad day.
But Lois doesn't approve, and seeing this look of disapproving look from Lois, he quickly flies down and grabs the Joker at the last minute before he splatters on the ground and saves him. Eventually, Lois finds out that Bruce is Batman, and they have a discussion about you got your typical Superman Lois flying through the air picture there. They have a discussion on his methods, and he decides, rather than to be this violent dark knight for justice, to instead become a Superman. So, but it's a really interesting take on it, merging these two characters and the worlds in this way. I always enjoyed the Elseworlds comics. There were a few duds out there, but it was always fun. Like the Marvel's What Ifs, where they just ask a question, what if this happened? It was a similar thing for Elseworlds, where DC, instead of just asking, what if this happened, and it was like this simple change, Elseworlds would really play around with the characters in a lot of ways. So you'd see kind of the what if Superman had been around in medieval times, or if Superman had been raised by the Waynes and become Batman. There's ones involving Green Lantern, Batman getting, I think there's like an Emerald Knight or whatever, rather than the Dark Knight, where Batman becomes a Green Lantern, and all these different types of stories where you get to see what it would be like if you merged these characters or had this other take on it, whether it's a futuristic take or a superhero set in some other point in history, things like that. So I always enjoyed reading these different takes on a lot of the DC characters, as well as the Marvel, what if type of stories.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's jump over to Kirby.
For the kids, we go to 1993 Archie Comics, Conservation Corps. They came from many lands, 4 creatures endowed with miraculous powers. England's stone hedgehog, ruler of rock and stone. North America's water buffalo, master of the waters. South America's firefly, commander of fire and heat. And Africa's greenhorn, lord of flora and vegetation. Together they have pledged to protect the ecology as the Conservation Corps. They just got done helping out the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles take down a giant oily duck, oil-covered duck. And coming back from that, they find out that there's a 5th member of the conservation corps that they got to find. So they go on a quest to hunt them down, and the 5th corpse member exists that they never met, and they plan to find them. Events take place after the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles battle, and in the 3rd comic, your Oily Duck just happens to reappear, kind of mechanicalized, has some new abilities and stuff. I don't want to give away who the 5th character is and what her abilities are. It is a female character. There's a T-Rex that gets kind of like a alien asteroid type thing, lands in this T-Rex skull, and the skull has this big brain now, and he puts himself back together, his bones, and they have to battle him in one of the scenarios. But yeah, if you like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle style comics for the kids versions and the Archie style form, these are good comics. Anthony, did you not get to your Harvey comics that you were mentioning possibly doing this week?
Well, I do have Casper, which is from Harvey Comics, so I do have Casper for later in the...
Then I will wait till later. That is fine.
Okay.
Good one for the kids.
You're good. Dr. Kurtzstad?
Well, I'm going back to 1988, 89. I'd started to read some other comics, and they kept referring to Invasion, a major DC event that happened in 88, 89. What happened in this particular series is that a group of alien races decided that Earth was dangerous because it had this genetic anomaly that caused superheroes to pop up within their population. And the alien cultures were all afraid that Earth could become a danger to the universe then. So they all band together to destroy life on Earth so that no more superheroes can arise within the genetic structures of Earthlings. The story is interesting. We are, of course, initially get the resistance of Earth's heroes against the aliens coming in, but then we find out that actually one of the alien races doesn't want to destroy all the Earthlings. Instead, they want to control all the super genetics that are coming out of Earthlings, which leads to a rift within the alien alliance. So we get the war of superheroes against this now fractured alien alliance. But at the same time, one of the aliens who is a scientist for the group that really wants to take over the superheroes is actually has taken to heart the idea that we want to destroy Earth's superpower ability and releases a gene bomb on Earth that will destroy all of the super genetics that are in the Earth line, which causes many of the superheroes their powers to go crazy, out of control. Firestorm can't control his powers in Russia, where there's a huge explosion going on. Captain Atom loses control of his powers. And there are a handful of heroes who aren't affected by it, some of them because they're like Batman, who doesn't have superhero genetics anyway, and a few others that for some reason aren't affected, who then have to find a solution for the growing chaos that comes out of the destruction of the superhero gene.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, Firestorm losing control of his powers in Russia. It sounds, sounds like something
they pick that up later again. Yeah.
Perfect. Stay clock.
So yeah, it's a very interesting storyline, and the reason I read it is then I had read some comics that came after. This line of story leads into a lot of things that happen then in other DC comics. The Atom is struggling with events that have happened within the Invasion storyline. Hawk and Dove are caught up in what's going on with the Invasion storyline. So, but it was an interesting look at how others might see the negative effects of superpowers out there and be threatened by them, or attempt to control them. And what happens if they do all lose control? Who is going to be the one who keeps everyone safe then? So Batman, I guess, has got it right according to Invasion. You better have plans in case these guys get out of control.
All right. Looking at the list, next up is Jim.
All right, like I said, I have more from that AWA Upshot line. This one is Archangel 8. There you go. This one is actually the one I liked the least of these four. And it's mostly because the story was very kind of confusing and unclear to me about who is ever speaking. You get very little direct dialogue. It's mostly like over somebody talking over. You hear like the background voice, and you don't know who's exactly speaking. It's very much like a dark anti-hero kind of thing, with a lot of violence. Like here, dead bodies laid out. You know, that's just one. There's a scene with dog fighting, and then the dog that wins is eating on people, and yeah. The only thing I really enjoyed about it was the premise that there is an angel, Archangel 8, who is God's chosen one to do vengeance on earth, and he is set up kind of like a Punisher type guy with, you see him there, with an arsenal in the foreground of all these guns and weapons. You don't know, however, at least it's not absolutely clear to me, if this is the person you've been seeing throughout the book doing these operations. And there's absolutely more than one person. There's also a woman who is like an assassin character. And you don't know what any side anybody is on. And like I said, I found it kind of confusing the whole way through. And I'm not, other than that concept of that Archangel, I'm not really pulled to see what's going on with it. I will probably look to see what the description of the following issues are before I go to read them. But and also how much it's tied into this joint universe that they've been building with this AWA Upshot line. But and actually, as far as the art style goes, I enjoyed the art better than I did in the Resistance. I thought it was a little bit better, a little cleaner line and coloring. And that is, the story was by Michael Moreci. The art is C.P. Smith, and the colors, and this is cool, Snakebite Cortez.
Ooh, that's a good birth name.
Yeah, it is. But this is another limited run. It's only 1 of 5 issues. So, Archangel 8.
All right. Yet another week with Archie comics from the pile. I'll be talking about Archie, the daily newspaper comics from the swinging 60s, volumes 1 and 2, which covers 1960 to 1965 combined. This, in each volume, there's more than 800 sequential comic strips, and volume 1 here is showing off the beginning of the school year in September 1960 to spring vacation in April 1963. So this one here has Betty is the primary art piece with Archie in the corner, and then we have volume 2 with Veronica. These are really gorgeous hardcovers, as you can tell. These are done by Bob Montana, who is doing the writing and the art, and doing these daily newspaper strips. These are all presented in black and white. You got a longer format. These are all like 4-panel stories. So you got 3 stories on each page. Me getting into comics prior to superhero comics and detective comics was definitely like newspaper comic strips, your Beetle Baileys, your Garfield, and things like that. And so going through this, I've actually have, I don't think it's accessible. It's kind of buried right now, but I have one of Dennis the Menace, and it's got like the complete collection, and it's all like, those little like calendar a day type size. So yeah, it's cool reading the comics in this kind of format. But yeah, once again, just kind of what I've said in the past about Archie comics, the way this humor has stayed consistent for the last 70 to 80 years, while there might be a couple dated references in here and there that just goes with the times changing, but the style of these characters have just not changed, but in a good way. There's definitely the other spin-offs we've talked about as Archie grows up into the new generations and everything, but the classic Archie comic continues to stay true to that kind of humor. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stories in here. Volumes 1 and 2, I do got to check to see if they're making any more of these. I think there's one from the 40s that's out there as well, but just to get these style hardcovers, that's just an awesome piece of the collection. This is an Eisner Award winning for Best Archival Comic Strip Collection. So yeah, once again, the people that designed these deserve a lot of credit, in addition to the Bob Montana comic strips stories being told. But I think it shows just such true talent, the way you can just kind of tell a story in 4 panels. A lot of the typical Archie comics will be the 4 to 5 page stories, but these strips, as with any newspaper strip, to be able to tell a joke, have like a character arc, whether it's just a 1 panel strip or a 1 panel or 3 to 4 panels, and just really shows a certain artistry that I'm very fond of here, and I'm excited to have it collected in these 2 gorgeous volumes, more to come. So once again, that is Archie, the daily newspaper comic from the swinging 60s. All right, let's jump over to, I think we're going to Kirby next.
All right, sticking with Archie. We got
story.
What?
My kind of story.
Archie Americana series, best of the 40s. In 1941, Pep Comics introduced Archie Andrews, America's newest boyfriend. Since then, Archie and his perennial teenage friends have entertained young and old alike with their hilarious misadventures. In this volume, you'll journey to a bygone era and unearth the roots of an American institution. Read the very first Archie story. Behold the first appearance of Archie's girlfriends Betty and Veronica and his arch rival Reggie. Encounter Jughead, Mr. Weatherby, Miss Grundy, and the rest of the Archie characters as they originally appeared. Follow Archie as he tours the magical world of Riverdale in his famous jalopy and laugh again at the antics of America's #1 teenagers. This one, it's kind of fun because you go back to the beginning days where they did this cover on here, which I don't know why I wish they would have went with the old style cover, but as you can see, Archie back in the day looked nothing like that.
Yeah.
And throughout the 40s, he stayed pretty much with that face. Towards the end, he started to turn a little bit to where we start to get more of the Archie we know now. But it's fun, and this is worth in its own just because you have a foreword done by Stephen King in here.
Whoa.
And a little snippet from it would be, if I can get the right page. Archie's pals and gals were my pals and gals, and his standard attitude. Well, I messed up again, but I know things will turn out okay because fate is kind. Become my attitude. There are worse ones to have during the storms of adolescence, believe me. And as a slightly overweight high school freshman who was always puffing before the phys ed calisthenics were even half over, Jughead Jones was a beacon of hope. If he could eat that much and stay thin, I figured maybe someday so could I. That day never came, alas. And of course, I fell in love with one of the two females in Archie's life. Do you know any guy who did it? I have a theory that a good psychiatrist could probably write a valid masculine psychological profile based on the answer to a single question. Which one really did it for you, Veronica or Betty? I'm not going to give you the answer here. You can read yourself. But yeah, I'm a Betty guy myself. But this is lots of mischievous and mayhem with the kids from Riverdale. And then even on page 120 here.
Getting a view into Anthony's psychology here.
Yeah, we were talking about Super Duck and back to his origins and stuff. They even have a little advertisement for Super Duck back in the 1940s. Woo.
Nice.
But yeah, this was a typical Archie stories. Brought back lots of memories. I didn't really recognize any of those from that one, but it was fun seeing Archie before he became what he is nowadays.
Yeah, I've got the Americana series as well, and the one that was in reach was the 80s, so I put that to the top of the pile to hit that up. And before we move on to the next pick, this episode is brought to you by Pop Tate's Chocolate Shop. So if you need a good hamburger, get a big jumbo burger for all of your hamburger needs. So.
Where
right.
You can sit on them?
Gotta keep it warm.
Well, it looks so flat too.
Looks like a stack of waffles there.
Dr. Kurtstad is up.
All right. My next picks were the first 9 issues of Hawk and Dove from 89 and 90. For those who aren't familiar with Hawk and Dove as characters, initially Hawk and Dove are kind of shown to us in DC Comics as two brothers, Hank and Don Hall. Hank is Hawk. Hawk is brutal, chaotic, always uses his fists to solve any problem that comes along. And Dove instead is intelligent, gentle, uses his agility and dexterity to solve the problems along with his intellect. In the initial comics, they're kind of mysteriously given these powers out of nowhere. Nobody knows exactly why or how Hawk and Dove are have been empowered with these powers. But as you come into this new series, where Don Hall has been killed, so the original Dove is gone, and now Don Granger takes over as the new Dove. They begin to ask the question, where did our powers come from? Who gave us these things, and what is the purpose for why we exist? And for me, that's where Hawk and Dove, the power of this particular series, Hawk and Dove, is really all about. We will find out later, not in these first 9 issues, but as you move along, that they are an experiment. The powers of chaos and the powers of order are constantly at war with one another. There's the threat of an apocalyptic showdown between these forces universally. And so Hawk and Dove are an experiment to see if the two can be brought together as balancing elements with one another. And there's something interesting in asking that question. All of our lives are chaos, order, they're always mixed up. And how do those things function together to bring about and balance our existence? Hawk and Dove are kind of a study in that reality as you read through the comics. There are disturbing things Hawk and Dove will find out about that origin as well. Don's death becomes a tragic and somewhat, I think, shocking thing when Hawk finally finds out why Don had to die. But they're an interesting pair, I think, within comic within the comic structures. This idea of they came into being as an experiment to see whether these two elements could actually function together. And I find their constant dialogue, their interactions as an interesting sort of dialogue about things that go on within all of us, that we want to forcibly make things happen. But maybe sometimes the better choice is to take the gentler, slower process to make things happen as well. In some ways, we see ourselves in the characters of Hawk and Dove. And so I've always enjoyed this particular pair within DC Comics, and I'm enjoying going back and rereading the world of Hawk and Dove.
Excellent. All right, Jim?
All right. This is the third one from AWA Upshot. This is called Red Border. And this is by Jason Starr writing, Will Conrad and Ivan Nunes on art. This is a crime story. This is a story of people kind of resisting the cartels in Mexico and going to the police when it's like, that's not the thing to do. The cartels are so powerful, you don't go to the police. They decide, no, we're going to take back our country, our community, and they go to the police and they suffer for it. The cartels come to their house, they kill them, they chase them down. Two of the people end up on the run. They end up running to the American border and are trying to cross. They meet another young man who seems to have studied the way across, and they try to follow him. But the cartels actually end up catching them at the border, and then they end up finding a mysterious gringo who is going to get them across. This is a crime story. This is pretty much what that book is. I don't see anything supernatural. I don't see anything superhero-ish. Nothing really, other than being a crime story. I don't see anything any other dark elements to it. It's just people versus the bad guy. Normal people versus bad guys, as far as I can tell. This one is a really good book. I think I'm pretty sure I'm going to go look for the rest of these. And this is number 1 of 4.
Hey, Jim, do any of them, the Upshot things, have any relationship to them?
Like I said, they say they are in a shared universe. But as far as I can tell so far, nothing is actually directly connected, except for maybe the locations.
Okay, because I know I ordered one.
They mentioned Mexico and New Mexico and the Ozarks several times across books. So maybe there will be things happening in one location or the other that cross over, but I have not yet seen that happen.
I can't remember the name of the one I ordered, but it had RV on it. I think it was something like post-apocalyptical, but I'm not sure what it was called. I asked about it multiple times, but I don't know if it's coming or not.
Yeah, I don't. These are the only 4 I've got so far. I don't know if there's any more out there. I'd have to look at the catalog to see what Upshot or what AWA's all got going. But I was in the Flashpoint last week and talking to the guy, and he said, "Here, why don't you check these out? Tell me what you think." So he gave me these 4 copies, and like I said, at least 2 of them I will be pursuing. This one is a maybe, and then probably not on the last one, the Archangel 8 for me. But I think somebody like Eric, who's really into the Punisher and that kind of guns and kind of thing, he might like that one.
Yeah.
All right.
But that was that one.
All right. Kirby and I were talking earlier in the week, and he was talking about bringing some Harvey comics to the table. And I'm like, you know what? I can dive into my original comic book stash from the 80s, and I picked out from Harvey Comics, Casper the Friendly Ghost. This is issue number 245. This is from the late 80s. Casper in this 3-part story for only $1. It's a 3-part story called The Evil Planet, in which Wendy, the good little witch, is doing the dishes, and Casper is just laying on the floor reading comic strips. He's reading about one of his favorite comic book heroes, Crash Hammerfist. Casper is really into the story, and Wendy comes back from the kitchen and realizes that there is a panel missing from the newspaper comic because Casper went into it. So the following story is Casper inside the adventure of the comic he was reading. And as I talk here, this is the part of the show where I step into this issue of the comic book here. Hold on. Try to get in here. Oh, no, I don't fit. I tried.
Good attempt, though.
Yeah. Apparently there was just a giant burger it just wasn't working out. So okay, so the whole story is dealing with Casper, who is coming face to face with his comic book hero, the Crash Hammerfist, and it's a story where he's basically starting to tries to rescue him because Crash Hammerfist is in trouble. And it just leads to a crazy adventure where they go to the evil planet. There's a scene in here where Casper, who's constantly going through walls to get to places, but he comes up against a wall that he can't get through, and it turns out that it's 27 feet deep, and apparently that is a ghost restriction, at least for little Casper. So but yeah, so it was a fun story there, but what was really cool, me just assuming this was just a Casper-centric one, this also has Spooky, the tough little ghost, so it has a couple like one-page comics from him. There's a short story with Wendy, the good little witch. There's a lot of fun stuff there, but the one that I was not expecting to be in here is the very backup story, who's not on the cover at all, but it is a story starring Baby Huey.
Oh, Baby Huey.
Yes, this I had a lot of fun with. This is Baby Huey in the Banana Game, in which Baby Huey is watching like an old Western show on the television set. And there's a stash of bananas there as he's using the bananas, pretending them that they're guns, and he's squirting the bananas out of the peel, and he's basically going around and accidentally stopping crime. So he's kind of having fun with these fake banana guns, and just he ends up accidentally saving people, and the cops always show up, and there's people giving him rewards, so he's getting money like $50, $100, like every page here he comes into a situation and he keeps getting paid for it. So it's a pretty funny story. And when he gets a lot of cash by the end, I will spoil this one. I think the spoilers have been lifted from the late 80s on Baby Huey stories. So I will spoil that with all of the money that he had gained with accidentally saving people with his banana guns, he decided to pool it all together to buy even more
Bananas.
Or as in his Baby Huey speeches, the whole time he goes, bananas. So he says bananas the whole time throughout this whole thing. I can barely say it once with barely concentrating, so I had to just reveal that at the end there. But yep, this was a fun Harvey Comics and stuff. What's that?
Kirby's got a Huey book there too.
Oh, yes. But yeah, this is a lot of fun, and it's just these are the kind of books that I like. Talking in the last selection, just reading a lot of comic strip, cartoony type of work, before I get into the superhero genre and stuff like that. So yeah, it was pretty fun and very inspirational. Once again, what you can do in an all ages audience, and for I don't know if they have an age limit on this particular book, but it wasn't written for, specifically for people in their mid to late 30s, but it's definitely appealing decades later. So that was a lot of fun. So
Yep. In my early comic years, that Casper was the one line outside of superheroes that I went, yeah, I enjoy Casper.
yeah, and I think Casper the movie just had an anniversary of some sort, probably
Yep.
a 25-year anniversary.
Something like that, yeah.
And what was kind of cool, I had just, because of Kirby mentioning Harvey, I had randomly just kind of went through my old collection. I saw Casper. I'm like, you know what? I'll pick this one. And earlier, right before the club meetup, I was doing attending an online convention in which from 3 to 4, Michael Allred had a panel. He very rarely does video. And so I tuned in for that and threw out some questions, and he was showing off his art. He was showing off his art and everything, and he always credits his love of comics coming from his older brother Lee Allred, who is a writer as well. And Lee is the one that introduced Mike to all of the best comics. All of these are the comics you have to read, and Lee just had a specific eye for the best comics. And Michael said, not that he was dissing any of the ones that Mike read, but he name dropped Casper today in the convention thing. So it was kind of funny. He's like, I was reading things like Casper until my brother Lee came along and told me to read Dark Knight or whatever. So but yeah, so Casper the Friendly Ghost, the world's most famous ghost, and very importantly, this issue is approved by the Comics Code Authority. So
All right.
So yep, this one passed. All right, next up, which is Kirby.
All right, well, since you mentioned the Harvey comics, for the young girls out there, you can also read about little Audrey. And she's the girl that's looking for anything to do. She has a crush on a little kid named Mel. She destroys their fort. He does things to her, treats her bad here and there, but she still keeps going after her. He keeps stealing her, taking her money, taking her sweets, anything he can get from her. And it's stories of a living robot, a talking plant, a weird cousin, all kinds of little stories that you can have fun with. But that sticks with the same story.
Under the Cowl.
Same lineup as the Casper gang and all them guys, and Richie Rich and all those that you can get through. But going back to Archie, we got the Americana series. We went into the best of the 50s, which you journey back to the days of drive-ins and hula hoops and join Archie and his teenage friends as they frolic through the frantic 50s. Read about Archie's Scottish ancestors. See the girls in cashmere sweaters, plaid skirts, and bobby socks. Experience the time Archie and Jughead became beatniks. Behold an Elvis look-alike mesmerizing Riverdale. Witness as Moose takes apart Archie literally. Follow Archie's lead as the group hoof it up at the sock hop. Glide with the gang as they roller skate through the magical world of Riverdale and laugh again at the antics of America's #1 teenagers. This is ongoing, more fun with Archie. This they did have Archie in his original form for the rest of the series now, as he is today. Lots of fun stories, like they said, going back to the sock hop days and stuff like that. You get the little, same with the 40s and the 50s, you get the different wordplay from those eras. So you got to get used to those when you're reading them, understanding what some of the stuff is. But yeah, takes you back.
Unfortunately, we haven't had sock hops ever since the COVID-19 pandemic.
No, sadly they don't, but those were fun. I went to lots of them.
All right. Next up here, we have another one from Jim. Actually, no, wait. Hold on.
You missed me.
Yep,
And
yep,
this one I picked especially for you, Anthony.
yep. You're
Hit
next. You're next.
Monkey. Where we get the origin of Hit Monkey. This trade paperback collects Hit Monkey 2010, number 1, Hit Monkey 2010B 1 through 3, and Deadpool 19 through 21. I first ran into Hit Monkey reading some of the Deadpool comics. Hit Monkey is one of those characters who runs with Deadpool occasionally. But I never really knew where Hit Monkey came from. I figured maybe he was like a mutated monkey or something. But no, Hit Monkey is just a regular monkey who, through tragic and somewhat sad circumstances, becomes Hit Monkey. And thinks that he is doing good by his killing of various folks in the world, protecting the innocent. At one point, Deadpool is one of those people he thinks he ought to get rid of, and tries his best to do so, but doesn't actually get Deadpool. So it's hard to talk about this book without giving much away if you haven't ever read the Hit Monkey stuff, because it really is a interesting set of circumstances that creates this monkey running around in a suit with pistols assassinating people. So all I can say is read it. I mean, it's very interesting sort of take on how tragic events can lead to something strange and different. So, Hit Monkey, the compilation of his origins. Take a look. If you've seen Hit Monkey and wonder, how does a monkey get 2 pistols in a suit?
I think he also recently stole a vial of blood from someone in India too, didn't he?
Could be.
Yeah, there was a time when James Gunn, prior to the success of Guardians, when Marvel was asking about if he wanted to work on a project, he kept throwing out Hit Monkey, being like, I want to make a Hit Monkey movie. And Marvel's like, oh, we're not doing Hit Monkey. And it's funny to think, like, now if he had said that, you know, post Guardians 3 coming up, they would probably be like, yes, Hit Monkey, Hit Monkey.
That's what, let's do that one.
Yeah, I think it would be great if he ends up showing up in like a Deadpool 3, you know, like.
Yeah, that could be really a kind of a neat. But without the origin, I don't know if you can really appreciate Hit Monkey as much.
I'm sure Deadpool would do a nice little narration to catch.
Okay, narration of how Hit Monkey, yeah.
Yep. He would sit there in a chair and he's got a smoking pipe and he's flipping through that comic to tell the people. Okay, now we are going to go to Jim.
Okay. And again with AWA Upshot, this is HotELl? Hell? I believe the title is officially HotELl, spelt that way, but then stylized as in the O and T are burnt out and the L is scratched in at the end
HotELl.
to make it hell. And this was the first one I read, and I really like this one. The story's not quite as strong as Resistance, but it is really good, and the premise is really cool. You open up in the lobby of the Pierrot Court Hotel, where you have a desk clerk who, first of all, is kind of creepy looking, and then just spends way too much time talking about the history and this painting or sculpture, whatever that is he's looking at, and just makes it even more creepy. And then you see a young woman who is very pregnant, who is checking in, and you start hearing about her story, about how she's running away from a bad situation, and she's talking to her baby, and you see her fall asleep talking to her baby, and things go weird from there. She meets a neighbor in the hotel who apparently has been living there for a while. You get kind of like a Hotel California feel where you can net check in, but you can never ever leave kind of thing. And then you see flashbacks to her abusive boyfriend who is on his way to meet them, even though she's running away. Then it goes back and forth between that and her conversations with her baby, which are really well done in the artwork. You see this? She is the green and the baby's an orange. And it's basically her dream conversation with him. You see more of her talks with the neighbor, and then his wife appears. And then she wakes up to find blood spots around her breasts and wonders what was going on. She thinks she scratched herself. And then we find out that it wasn't necessarily scratching, that there is something more going on while she sleeps, and she has these dream conversations with her baby.
Oh.
Cute kid.
Yes.
Was that
Damon,
Baby
I see
Yoda?
your expression. This is a book that I think you would really like. Now, the way this story ends, I don't know if we're going to continue with these characters or just get more stories of this nature in the hotel. Because it seems like this person's story has ended when this book ends. But even so, I want to see more creepiness, horror stuff happening like this in this hotel. This place where it's a little place, someplace along Route 66 that nobody can find until they find it. So it's the Perot. If you ever come across the Perot Courts Hotel, you probably don't want to stop.
Keep going.
And this is one of 4 on this series.
So is it safe to say that it isn't your answer for the letters page about which comic book city you want to live in? And
I don't know what city this is in yet, so.
Well, just stay away from there.
Yeah. So, like I said, Damon, I thought that he would like this, and then it reminded me of that Paradise Court.
If
Not exactly
anybody-
the same story, but that kind of thing where you go to someplace and it's yeah.
Not what you expect.
I'll have to check it out.
Okay, if anybody is interested, I do have all 4 of those titles. I've got the first issue sitting here.
Apparently Diamond sent them to stores as promos.
Well, I'll take the hotel one if you set it aside for me.
So
Oh, you beat me to it.
Well, if Damon wants it, I can find it. So go ahead, Damon. This is up your alley.
and I will double check just to make sure I don't have more than that. Again, I've got 2 more of the Resistance coming next week, but
Might take one of those off your
Dad, you
hand.
said you already read that one.
Yeah, I got that one.
You've got that because I think we had gotten. That's why I'm confused on why we have 2 coming next week, because I think we already had some of those come in, and I think Kurt had it, and then maybe the other one was for you. But yeah, we've got at least 1 copy of each of the other.
Well, if you find a second hotel, let me know, and I'll take that one.
Okay.
Kirby, you were saying you were looking for something from
You had the
AWA?
Yeah, when you were showing a page, one of the pages had it on it.
Year 0?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. I'm looking at the catalog. That they're pushing number 4.
Yeah. I know I ordered year 0 issue 1 way back when. So. That's why when David said he got some Upshot Now stuff in just before all this happened, I'm like, well, did you get my year 0? And
Well, I think when we were talking about it, and I showed you these, because that's when Shelley had come in.
yeah, I never seen him.
And I think at that time we couldn't figure out what the title was.
Yeah. Then she came upstairs, and Jim was coming in the house, and I said year 0, and so. But yeah, see one.
It sounds like an interesting premise too.
Yeah.
All right, we have 1 more title on the weekly reviews. Dr. Kurt's dad, take us home.
Yep. Last one I have is, again, I had to pick it up on Kindle. I had gotten a couple of the issues that were in this series at Crimson Cowl in the back issues box. But Blood and Thunder. Actually, this was a series that crossed over between Thor, Silver Surfer, and the Infinity Watch. It took place right after the Infinity Gauntlet, and Thor begins to display a psychosis. Thor is losing it. He thinks he sees a Valkyrie who's wandering around with him, who is persuading him to no longer be the puppet of Asgard, but to go back and pay them all back for what they've done. And so Thor is beginning to lose it. And not only wants to punish Asgard, but the entire universe with his power. And so he's the first people who are trying to intervene are Bed Ray Bill and Sif, who want to try to stop him from this, because if he goes back to Asgard, they will declare him as having warrior madness and exile him from Asgard forever, because they've done this with other of the gods who have kind of lost it in Asgard. But along the way, he also runs into Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, the Infinity Watch, who all also jump in to try to help Thor out and bring him back to normal. For those who don't know who the Infinity Watch is, what happened is the Infinity Watch is formed after Thanos is defeated and the Infinity Gauntlet is taken apart, and each member of the Infinity Watch gets one of the Infinity Stones. And so the Infinity Watch is Adam Warlock, Pip the Troll, Gamora, Drax the Destroyer, Moondragon, and I can't remember who the last one is. But anyway, they are all a part of this story as well. And even they recruit to help them. Here's the big twist in the story: Thanos. Because no one can handle Thor in his present state, so they're hoping that Thanos becomes part of the will become part of the solution as well. And so they recruit him as part of the group to try to help him too. And it becomes an interesting story how these beings all try to come together to help Thor, who has now gone completely wacko and attacks any of them anytime they try to come to help him. And finally, and I won't give the twist away at the end, there's only one person who can help Thor, because that is the person who created the problem in the first place. And so if you want to know how Thor is driven to insanity and who is the one person who can help him, you will have to read the story, Blood and Thunder. You can get it as a trade paperback. You can get it on Kindle as a trade. I thought it was a really great story. There's lots of action, a few interesting twists in the story, and it was just a really enjoyable read. Blood and Thunder.
And wasn't Thanos the unusual last member revealed for the Infinity Watch?
I think in the end, yeah, he was the one who had, and as part of the storyline, just to give you a little bit of a spoiler and a hint, Thor ends up with the Power Stone because fighting Drax, he punches him in the stomach, and Drax has swallowed the Infinity Stone he has. He spits it up. And now Thor has the Power Stone, which makes the whole thing even worse.
Yeah, I ran back to my Thanos shelf, and I have the little hero clicks of the Infinity Watch, and all of them that you had listed were there, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? And I double-checked online because yeah, I think in the story beat they were
right.
Last one was a mystery to everybody to help protect it, and I think it ended up being Thanos. So.
Yeah. But at this point in the story, that hasn't been revealed, and so Pip ends up going to get Thanos because everybody else is getting beat to pieces, and he thinks, well, the one person who might be able to take Thor is Thanos, and so Pip goes and fetches him, much to the surprise of everyone else. And actually, Thanos becomes pivotal in dealing with the problem within the storyline. So I found it a thoroughly enjoyable story. It's a good follow-up if you were a big Infinity Gauntlet fan back then. This was part of the storyline that followed on right after the Infinity Gauntlet.
Excellent. All right, that will wrap it up for the weekly reviews, but we will move right on over to the letters page.
Just a quick update as we're doing this. I don't know what's going on with year 0 because while I figured that we would have gotten stuff the first week that Diamond sent things out, we didn't get anything. And looking at it, that's when it says that year 0 shipped. So
Not a problem I ain't too worried about, since I don't know where or what I'm sitting with anyways. I was just going to wait till the trade paperback came out for it. I figure after 4 or 6 issues, they'll pump that out anyways.
Because that one, I don't know. We did not get invoiced for it. Shows 1 order, 0 shipped. Right now, they're showing it as a purple triangle status. And yeah, none of... We had a goofy invoice thing that looked like we were going to get some stuff on the 20th, and then none of that shipped. So the first week that they supposedly were back to sending comics out, we didn't get anything. And
in your picture you posted, was there a Captain Marvel mug in the top of it?
Yes, that we do have.
Did you get one for me or not?
Well, I'm going to assume that was for you, not second day. Like I had replied in your thing, and I don't know if you saw that. I, not thinking about it, thinking Captain Marvel mug, I assumed it was an Anthony thing. But
I thought you ordered one too. That's why I didn't know.
I didn't order one, no.
Okay.
Anthony did not order one, so it's yours.
No. Cool. But yeah, with it already being on year 04, I figured I'd have to hunt down 2 and 3 if I did get one. So I figured, screw it. Just wait for the trade paperback. I like that version better anyways.
All right. We will hit record on the audio again and jump right back into it. Welcome to the letters page. What we're going to do here is we have a question that everyone's going to contribute an answer to. And this one is, which comic book city do you want to live in? Now, I'll kick it off here. The whole time when I'm thinking comic book cities, immediately, even though I'm a Marvel guy more, I just think of DC cities with the fictional cities, the Marvel existing in, our world, so to speak. So in my head, I keep thinking like, all right, which one of these DC cities? And then I'm like, wait, why would I want to just live in one of these dangerous cities? And I will pick the easiest answer, Riverdale. Riverdale is just nothing but fun, unless it's the afterlife with Archie Riverdale, then,
or the one that's presently on television.
Yeah, the current one, but I'm talking like the ones represented in the books that Kirby brought up in those little spotlights there. So I'm talking about just a regular old town. Everyone's all happy and bubbly and eating burgers and drinking shakes, and it's just free of danger up until the predators and the zombies and all the murderers of modern Archie start happening. So I'm talking all of the books that Kirby brought to the table. I want to live in that Riverdale.
I've got an answer. Once I saw the question, it only took me a few moments to come up with my answer, and for me, it's none of them. There's not a comic book city that I would want to live in. Yeah, I'm happy where I'm at. Now, that said, there are a lot of them that I think it would be cool to visit, to see what a Gotham or a Metropolis or any of those cities would be like, to actually be able to physically see these cities. Just a quick visit would be wonderful. I'd love that
during the day.
But Hey, happy birthday.
Thanks.
But yeah, none of them that I'd want to live, great to visit, wouldn't want to live there.
All right, Damon.
Yes, I originally was going to say Cleveland so I could hang with Howard the Duck, but I must have to go with Mos Eisley on Tatooine in the Star Wars universe. A wretched hive of scum and villainy, that's where I call home. I think it'd be cool to walk into the bar, get some drinks, hop on a space cruiser, and shoot out up and away,
Are you ready for all the sandstorms and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. I'm pretty big. I'm anchored. It would take a lot to blow me around, so I think I'd be okay.
Because as we all know, especially in the Star Wars universe, sand, it gets everywhere.
Everywhere.
Excellent answer. Kirby.
Like David, none of the cities. I'm not a city person. If I could choose something outside the city, maybe the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles farmhouse.
There you go.
Or Harley Quinn's aunt's house, or somewhere away from the city. You can have all the city you want, but fun city would probably be Sunnydale, just because all the characters and creatures, but I probably wouldn't last long. I'd probably get eaten within a day or two.
Yeah, I think they had name dropped, like, in the Buffy universe, there's, 17 cemeteries in Sunnydale, I think. So, yeah.
I'll be busy taking pictures all day and night.
All right, Dr. Kirkstad.
Well, it was a toss-up. Actually, the question really threw me. I mean, I've never thought about living in any of those, but probably the toss-up for me would be Kunlun would be one. I have a real fascination with martial arts, and to have an entire city that's devoted to that reality, and the characters in Kunlun are just really fascinating. But probably more realistically, I would say Star City. It's more upbeat than a lot of the DC comic book cities. They love their superhero. There's not a lot of people who are belly aching about Flash hanging around there. They have Star Labs there, which is kind of a cool place to probably hang around. They have the Flash Museum that you could go and visit, which is probably pretty cool. And their list of supervillains are at least interesting.
That,
Pied Piper.
Dr. Kurt's dad?
What?
That is Central City?
Yep.
Not
Central
Star
City.
City?
Oh, yeah, Central City. Star City is where Arrow hangs out.
You're right. Correct.
Central City is the one I would want to be in. And they have interesting villains there, too. You've got the Pied Piper, the Trickster, Captain Cold. Those are, that's a pretty classy rogues gallery there. So, yeah, Central City would be where Central City or Kunlun.
Excellent. Katie.
Okay, so before the pandemic, I would have said New York City, hands down, easy choice. But we don't live in that universe anymore. And actually, very much in real world, I have thought about, what does this pandemic mean for what I want in my living situation? So New York is out. And I think I want to live in Mr. Crypt's town. I will, get a second career working with Mr. Crypt at the library. That would be really fun. Maybe he can help me get a really dapper outfit like he has, and that would be nice because I've been wearing pajamas for 3 months now. And I think that would be really good. I don't know if I'd want to live with them though, because living with a skeleton and a rat is, too much for me. But in that same town, we could be work friends. So I'm moving to Mr. Crypt's city.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Crypt could benefit from having you as a friend because he's, used to being chased by the villagers. So putting you in there with the librarian, with Baron Rat, and now recently Bigfoot, that seems like it's a nice little Scooby gang you got. So.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's very nice. And Baron Rat throws really good parties, so I think I'd ever be.
Yeah, he does.
Lots of cheese.
We could. He does. Oh my gosh, Jed loves his cheese. Oh my God, I could bring him Wisconsin cheese, and we'd be best buds. Fantastic. Oh, I love this.
speaking of cheese, and I didn't find a natural way to bring this into the comic club, but I will now.
Yeah.
So when I looked on the floor, I saw a little like orange piece of something. I thought it was like a little piece of plastic that like snapped off of an action figure or something. And while we were talking, I was just kind of sitting here just being like, I was kind of looking around just being like, what did this snap off of? And I realized, it's an old piece of cheese. So.
Oh. Be sure to leave cheese out overnight for Barry. Won't bring you presents.
Yeah, and I haven't had dinner yet, so.
There you go. Never goes bad.
All right,
Just
Jim.
a little bit of a warning, though. I did actually used to work with a rat, and it's not all it's cracked up to be.
No, and I think that part would be hard to overcome, but I guess we all just gotta do our best. To the skeleton either, so that might be kind of weird, but we'll do what we can do. I took MP training at work, and maybe I'll have a chance to put that into better action. So
there you go. All right, Jim, your answer.
Well, I got a couple. One of them is in the DC world, and that is Fawcett City, which in some times is the home of Captain Marvel and the Marvel family.
Yep.
And that is because that has been usually set in Wisconsin. Now, sometimes they take the Marvels out of Fawcett City and they put them over in Michigan, I think Detroit. But when they're in Fawcett City is in Wisconsin. So that's my one answer there, because then I'd be that. But then I think the one I would really like to do would be Fabletown. And Fabletown is from the book Fables. And that is basically, it's not just a city, it's an enclave in the middle of New York City, which is disguised to look like an ordinary city block, but within it is this community where all the Fables live, and there's this building that has magically dimensioned apartments so that you can you have an apartment, but inside is an entire castle. So
which Fable are you?
Which Fable would I be? Oh,
seeing you got to be a Fable to live in Fabletown.
I think I would be like one of the more support characters. I'd probably like Humpty Dumpty and run the Eggman, up front.
All right, that will conclude another issue of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. Thank you all for listening. For those watching on the YouTube video portion, like and subscribe and comment and all of that fun stuff. Share the podcast. Check it out. If you have any recommendations for future letters page, next week will be our first Saturday of a new month, which means another rounds of Jacob's birthday battle, in which he did say he was going to try to make it. So we'll see if he has any June birthdays. I know June is a big month for birthdays, so we'll see if we can wrangle him in for one of those. But yep, thanks for listening. This entire time, I've been riding along in Archie's jalopy.
Been muted again.
I was going to say I was in the top center square, but now I'm the one that's always unmuted.
I'm not a fable. I'm an old wives' tale.
I'm a dog stuck in a man's body.
I'm free and I can escape from anything.
I'm not sure what day or month it is anymore.
Over easy or sunny side up?
To be continued.